was about 15 minutes into that big argument that we had. I said, well, shit, I want to do that too.
Right, that's true.
Like, I want to go fuck other people too. I just didn't think that was an option.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We always strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy and positive approach to non-monogamy.
However, everyone approaches this a little different, and at its core, our show is about hearing and learning from the different experiences and approaches people have. With that in mind, it's important to remember that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of our own.
It's also important to remember that we aren't doctors or therapists and that we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on this show.
One final thing that we need to let you know about is that this podcast will hopefully include some explicit language. So, if that kind of thing offends you, we suggest you just keep listening until it no longer does. However, if you're under the age of 18, you should probably stop listening or gather up your parents and listen as a family. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 42. We're Finn and Emma, and first off, Happy New Year, everyone! It's 2019 officially.
Oh, you're a day late.
Well, it's still officially 2019. Woohoo!
Yes. Happy New Year to everybody. We hope everybody had a wonderful 2018 and that you're gearing up for an even better 2019. We can't say too much about it, but we are.
Yeah, we're excited.
We've got tons of awesome stuff coming. We've got some really cool things coming for the show in 2019, so stay tuned for that.
We're working hard and hoping to bring you some awesome things.
One of those things I will mention that we're allowed to mention because it's our show. If you want to leave us any feedback, reach out to us, say hello. You can do that on our website with the old-fashioned email format.
Uh-huh.
And now you can leave us a voicemail.
Dun, 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 dun.
We won't know your phone number or anything like that. It's just a little button you click. And then it basically sends us a little MP3 of whatever you say into your microphone.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So, yeah.
You can find that at our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
And, real quick, while we're at it, we'll just tell you all two of our favorite resources. The first one is the website that we use to meet other people and our favorite place to do so,
Cassidy.com.
And we're able to now give you 6 free months of a premium platinum. I don't know what the word is that they use, but
membership.
Basically the all expenses paid 6 months free membership. So get on there. The more of you that are on there, the better the site is and the more people that we can meet through the site. So do that.
Yes. The other resource we quickly wanted to mention is stdcheck.com. You can use the link on our webpage for $10 off, and that's a really easy and fast service to get tested for STIs.
Yeah, and both of these are awesome for you, and they support the show. So we appreciate all of you who have used them. Thank you for that.
Yes, and again, all the links are on our website.
normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Good job.
I know. All right.
Now, we haven't actually officially mentioned the interview for today.
Oh, yeah. We should do that. Bill and Felice. This is a pretty awesome interview.
Yeah, they're an incredible couple.
We're going to get right to it. I will just say, though, the one thing that I really loved about this is that they got started in sort of an unconventional way and in a way that most people probably wouldn't. And,
yeah.
And they also have done some unconventional things throughout their trip. But I think my favorite part about this is that, you know, rather than throwing in the towel or giving up, they sort of turned what was a very difficult situation into the best sex they've ever had in their 33-plus year marriage.
Yeah. They have an incredible story and lots of energy, and I love the honesty between them, too.
Yes. So go listen now, and we will see you at the other side.
Ciao.
Like I said, we're kind of in this kind of swally label, which is, you know, we definitely seem to connect better with swingers. So we have some people that we've got longer time relationships, and then other folks we're, you know, kind of fuck buddies with.
Sure.
I can't remember which podcast it is. You know, the one that, so I don't want to call anyone out who you've already talked to, but I remember one of the guys you talked to was, you know, he was like mid-30s. Immediately the comic says, well, what happens when we're 50?
Here to tell you what happens when you're 50.
So, my comment is, well, when I'm 50, God, I've had the best sex of my whole life since I've been 50. So, you don't have to stop when you're 50. It actually can be really great.
Yeah.
But it is different.
And I think that's an awesome place to maybe we'll just start right in and maybe tell us a little more about yourselves and the listeners a little bit about who you guys are just as people, and then maybe we'll kind of roll that into your story.
Okay, cool. So I'm Bill. I'm 55. I'm a professional. We live somewhere in southwestern United States in a medium to large city, and we've been married for 33 years, and been doing the swinging / poly, whatever it's turned into, for about the last 3 years. So first year we kind of were identified as swingers, and things evolved over time.
Yeah. And so I'm Felice, and what?
You're 54?
Oh, I'm 54, and I'm a professional. I work full time. I'm the one who got us into this kind of by accident, but somewhere in my head, I knew Bill. He's a scientist and he's very intellectual. He thinks a lot. So he's led by his intellect more than his emotions, but his emotions did get involved. So somewhere along the line, I knew he would understand, but I wasn't brave enough to ask him about it at first. So that was kind of a rough couple months.
How long had you been thinking about it before you decided to bring it up to him?
Well, I had a friend who was on Craigslist who was meeting up with these men and or hooking up with them, and I was fascinated by her stories. I would go to lunch with her and go, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And she would tell me all about it. And there was a part of my mind that was like, God, I wish I was doing this or something like this. And she was single. She's never been married. So I kind of understood. And my father died, and I kind of went to a dark place. And one Saturday I was home alone, and I got on Craigslist and I put my own ad out and said, "Oh, I got a hall pass." And I didn't. And I met a couple of guys, and one of the guys worked where I worked. And I work for I work for a university, so it's huge.
Sure.
And he didn't work in the same part of the university that I work in. And we just met in my office one day after work and fucked, and the die was cast.
and at this point it was, I guess that would have been labeled cheating at that point, right? Because you hadn't... Okay.
I don't like to call it cheating, but it was.
Okay.
But what else are you going to call it? Yeah, I was essentially, and I knew it felt so good though. It felt, what I was experiencing from my dad's death was really dark. And when I was doing this, there was exhilaration and happiness and, that kind of euphoria that you only get from kind of doing those transgressive things.
Right.
And, and so that went on for about 4 months. And then, I think Bill was starting to realize that something, we've been together for 33 years. We're really good friends.
So a little more of our background is we got together very young.
Yeah.
Pretty inexperienced. So, Felice was extremely inexperienced. So yeah. I was like,
I was a virgin.
I was her first and only guy at that point. And so, as I understood it, she, kind of was thinking about life and death.
Yes.
That's one of the things that happens when you're our age. The kids grow up and they move out, and all of a sudden you're thinking about things like mortality.
Yeah, I had just turned 50, and I was thinking, what would I regret? And one of them was just, I wanted to be with another man. And it wasn't like I didn't want to end Bill and I's relationship. I just wanted to do this thing. Right.
Yeah.
And
over the 30 years you had been married before then, had it ever come up in conversation at all?
Not really. No.
Not really. Mm-hmm. No, we were too busy,
Busy going to school.
Then
getting jobs, and then
raising two kids, and our sex life had been getting better and better, and a little more kinkier as the years went on, because we were kind of getting bored, and Bill's like reading things, and we did kind of watch porn together, and started introducing those, novel things to our relationship as the kids got older. So I think we did talk about once. We were watching Showtime about the gigolos.
We talked about it in bed. So there was porn. There was a lot of threesome porn. Some of that would come into play. So I think I probably whipped out a dildo, and she got her first experience with double penetration.
Yeah,
and and some dirty talk, and so. It was talk in a fantasy sense,
right?
But it wasn't.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It wasn't concrete in sense of, hey, let's really go do this ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I guess I really didn't even know, like, there was swingers. I mean, I guess I knew, but I really didn't. I thought that was maybe something, esoteric and.
It was like Eyes Wide Shut and stuff like that. So eventually I found out what she was doing. And
I was wondering if Felice, if you don't mind taking us through, like, sort of how that worked for you, sharing with him what happened and what was happening, because I imagine that was obviously not an easy thing to do. I'm sure it was scary and probably terrifying.
No, it was truly terrifying, and it happened. I think Bill kind of knew things were going badly, that there was something wrong with me, and that my mood had changed, and Bill just thought I was depressed for my father, but I think he started realizing something else was going on, and one day I left my private email open on my computer, and he saw it. He called me at work and said, I found your emails, and I knew exactly what he meant. And so I came home, and I had to go back to school that night. I was getting my master's degree, and I was terrified of what he was going to say to me, if he was going to leave me, and I didn't know. And so when he confronted me about it, I totally confessed. I did not say, "Oh, you're wrong" or anything, because it was right there in an email. And I can't argue with that. And I totally confessed, but I was very clear to him that this had nothing to do with him, that this was my own personal journey, and that I loved him. I wanted to continue to be with him. And I told him that, when my father died, I wanted to know if he had any regrets. And I started feeling some regrets that I hadn't had. And this was one of them, like the first thing that popped into my head about things I hadn't done. And I've never been with another man, and I really wanted to experience what that was like. And Bill was very, very upset. He was livid. And the next 9 months of our lives was pretty tumultuous. In the middle of that, I had a hip replacement surgery, and Bill just, he was right by my side, took care of me. He didn't hold a grudge. He cared for me for, 6 to 8 weeks that I was off my feet. And that proved to me that infidelity, you can live through it and still love each other. And
there's a lot of healing that goes on with that. Mm-hmm. The amazing thing was about 15 minutes into that big argument that we had, I said, well, shit, I want to do that too.
Right. That's true.
It's like I want to go fuck other people too. It's like I just didn't think that was an option.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing was, and there was part of me that was turned on by the whole thing. So I was turned on by, I made her sort of divulge, what happened, and I was turned on by what happened. And so I had, at the time I had to kind of sit and cook in that and figure out what that was.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're pissed, but at the same time, you got a boner, and you're like, what do I do with this thing?
Well, I did something with it. So
yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah.
So the 9 months we kind of been going on, but we figured it out. We didn't figure it all out. We kind of figured, okay, we want to kind of open up the relationship, and so we kind of went down the same route that she was going down. So we had this romantic 30-year anniversary trip that we took, and we finally, at the end of the trip, we're getting ready to come home. We decided, okay, let's pull the trigger. So we kind of wrote up our first. It was an ad for Craigslist because we just kind of.
Yeah, we didn't know. Like, what do you do? How do you do this? We didn't like.
And so we wrote a couple of ads for basically, for threesomes, for a woman and for a guy, and
a gal or a gal.
Right.
Yeah.
A gal and a guy. One for MMF and one for FFM. And we let it fly when we got home.
And this was your first step taking this, or this was your first step that you took after you found out about the infidelity that had happened.
I wouldn't say it was the first step. We were in overseas.
Okay.
And so we tried. The first thing we did was prostitution was legal. So actually we paid for a call girl.
I owed him one.
which was great.
She was beautiful. It was very above board, like what we should do in this country. But it was, we just met her at her apartment. It was really very tasteful, well done. And it was really fun.
Yeah. So that was the first time I was with somebody else. I was still trying to kind of. I mean, I'd never dated as an adult. Never, and didn't date that. I had a couple girlfriends, before her. So we were both pretty experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to see, okay, can I actually do this? More than the fantasy.
And honestly, I think that strategy is way underutilized and way underrated. And I was wondering if you don't mind expanding on it a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people who are afraid to get into this because they're afraid that maybe the other person's going to get attached. And, I don't know if you guys listen to Dan Savage, but he talks a lot about, paying for sex. And a lot of the times he says, you're not paying for the sex, you're paying for them to go away afterwards. And it may be a little bit harsh, but it was something. Maybe talk about the mentality there for you guys.
First thing we looked at was one of the legal brothels out in Vegas,
mm-hmm.
and that was a little out of our price range, or at least
mm-hmm.
it seemed. I may be slightly cheap, and so
cheap.
And so we were going to be in Europe, and the price there was, was less than half of what that was.
Right.
Plus it was, completely above board, well regulated, right. Women are tested. I mean, it's,
exactly.
safe.
Yeah.
I mean, the cool thing was that, when we got ready to fuck, the woman, basically had sized me up and reached into her purse and suddenly, produced a perfectly sized condom that she then put on me before we fucked. Mm-hmm. And, she was great.
The problem I think we were having I don't know why we went with a prostitute. I just felt like Bill needed to know what it was like. And it was because I had some experience with another man, and it was kind of like I wanted him to know what the feeling feels like. And so I think that's why we went with the prostitute, because it felt like he could get that experience from a professional, and that he could feel what I was feeling, that that sense of just being with somebody other than me.
Well, frankly, it was just a confidence thing too. I mean,
Yeah,
I had never, I hadn't dated anyone else since I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's a lot of years, a lot of time. Spent a lot of time as, just a monogamous,
Yeah.
Monogamous, faithful, married guy. And all of a sudden you're, in this sex adult dating world. And, how does that work?
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
So,
we were both very naive and not experienced.
Sure.
Yeah, well, and the sex worker route makes a lot of sense for a lot of couples, and I don't think it's a widely used strategy that could be more heavily adopted.
Well, I started listening. I'm a huge Dan Savage fan, and so I listen to him faithfully. He's like my sexual Bible. I mean,
we're Magnum subscribers.
Yeah, we're Magnum subscribers. And
it's in the queue.
Most of his advice, I think, is spot on. I mean, sometimes I disagree with him, but
sure, yeah. Like anybody,
anyone.
To get a variety of information.
Right.
It's not all about non-monogamy. It's not all about cheating. It's got a lot of texture to it that I enjoy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if Bill, if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about how you worked through maybe like the breaking of trust and finding a way back to a point where you were willing to explore this together, because it takes a lot of trust and a lot of confidence in your partner. And I imagine after learning that through those 9 months, that was probably a big part, was the rebuilding of trust.
I think the rebuilding of trust took a lot longer than just the 9 months. I mean, I think we had, we saw a therapist, and we said it was like in basically 2 years and change. Mm-hmm. And I think in the end we had to get a different therapist because we eventually freaked him the fuck out. But he, but I think he was about right about the trust. There was about a 2-year process to rebuild that. So when it started, I was a basket case. I mean, I was, I wanted into all of her devices, all of her accounts. I was, watching her like a hawk, and eventually that trust got built back. And I actually think ironically, doing the swinging and actually, getting towards a poly lifestyle actually contributed greatly to that trust. Because now we're free to be completely open with each other. Mm-hmm. So we have play dates, and we always know when each other is playing. We eventually, if we go forward in the story, we play separately with people. Both of us do. And, we just trust each other. And, a big piece of that was actually biting into the horrible jealousy, and trust issue, and actually feeling the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
And learning how to get over it.
Yeah.
And then a word I think that we actually genuinely felt, is this poly word of compersion, which I think is a really beautiful concept.
Right.
And actually to be happy with the joy that your partner is getting with somebody else. And I think both of us have felt that.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that jealousy isn't lurking, lurking like a monster in the corner waiting to, jump out at you. But,
jealousy. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you feel the compersion right away, even though you were still fighting the jealousy and the trust issues, or did it take a while to develop?
It was a very specific relationship and set of events that I think got the compersion out. Mm-hmm. We sort of built to it to where you're feeling better and better. It was at a point where we'd had a lot of we'd had a lot of threesomes. Most of the threesomes we had originally were MMF threesomes. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of getting off that initial feeling being turned on of with her with another guy. And so I was a guy plus some other lucky fellow. And ultimately learn, I think, to start getting through that by seeing how much pleasure she got and how much she enjoyed having two men with her.
That I really enjoy. And I haven't done it in a really long time because we do play separately. But the compersion
the last time she did was really super.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, I turned 54 in April, and I organized my own foursome, I guess.
It's kind of one of those, when does it become a gangbang? When is it just,
Yeah.
And I invited my very special guy friends and Bill's girlfriend, who is a friend of mine, too. And the three of us are, I would say, very close. And she came and she fluffed my guys when we would be switching around. It was a really great evening because I loved everybody in a certain way, and they were all there for me, and it was truly very giving of everybody. It was just a really wonderful, afternoon.
Yeah.
It was an afternoon evening, but the afternoon part was the really good part.
Right. Yeah.
So she got one of her bucket list items checked off. So
Doesn't say 54 doesn't sound that bad.
I know, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So her bucket list was she wanted airtight.
Wow.
And so she, so I was the last straw. So I completed I completed her, but she had a great time having three guys just ravage her. And, and our girlfriend had a great time fluffing and just watching the live.
Yeah, she really enjoyed it a lot. So it was good. But I think the speaking of that is, last year I met a guy who's long distance, but we had immediately connected, and it was a really intense relationship, and I fell in love with him, and Bill knew it. I was very open with Bill, and he knew it. Bill knew it. He says, "You're in love with him," and I said, "Yeah, I am." And I think through the 8 months of that relationship, Bill really was quite content with it. He knew that I wasn't going to leave him or anything, but that I had this capacity to love two people at one time. And of course, that relationship was more of that new relationship energy, that the NRE that they talk about, and it was, all consuming. And Bill was still, very. I never heard anything like jealousy from him or anything like that. It was, and when it broke up, and the reason it broke up is because it burned bright and quick that the gentleman invited me on a vacation with his wife and boyfriend. This was so new to me, so like out there, and I accepted it. But at the last minute, her boyfriend backed out, and I should have too. But I went, and there was them and me, and it was like doomed from the beginning. I knew it, and I just didn't want to feel it. I just didn't. I wanted to close my head off and say, "Oh, this will be fine." And it was clear. It was very clear to me by the second day that there was so much tension between her and I that this was never gonna happen. And so after that, it kind of ended abruptly, very immaturely, and not on my part. I wanted us to be friends, but he couldn't remain that way because his wife refused to let him. But wow. Bill, through the whole thing, and through the breakup, Bill was right by my side. He took care of me. He was so there for me. And I was like, I think we've reached that. It was like that pinnacle.
It was like textbook Polly, kind of like, you can't explain it to anyone else because you're comforting your partner.
Yeah.
Right.
From a break with someone else. I mean,
it's so weird.
I really liked him. So I considered him a friend as well. So he was a great guy. And I felt maybe slightly misguided, but I felt, completely comfortable, didn't have any worries about him spending time being alone with my wife. And
yeah, we went on like 3 long weekends together, and then for some reason he wanted to invite me on vacation, which all those people thinking about doing this, that's a senior level thing to do.
That's not varsity level. That's professional.
That's professional. Non-monogamy, and you have to be. I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, both of you, I feel like in the last, you said it's only been 3 years since you started doing this, and you've come a long way. Like that's crazy.
I think it was, like I said, I think it was varsity level stuff that I should have not gotten into at all.
So I'm just curious, how many days did you have to suffer in the agony of awkwardness?
Yeah, see, you know it. Wow. Yeah, it was about 4 days.
Oof.
Wow.
And actually, in the middle of it, I told him I want to leave. And I should have lied and said, oh, my work needs me. I got to go back. Instead, I told him, I just said, this isn't working. Yeah. And I said, let me just go. And he refused to let me go. And he's like, please stay, please stay. And it was awful. I mean, the day we went it was a Thursday. So Wednesday, I barely saw him that day because she, it was clear. And then I called Bill and I said, I need to go. And Bill was like, don't do it. But Thursday we got on we went to the airport. Oh my God. I thought I was going to throw up. I was just my stomach was in knots. It was very rough. I'd say for almost 48 hours. It was, wow. It was nauseating. Yeah.
I mean, and it gets to the hard thing with the swinging, which is the four-way connection.
Yeah.
Because you'll have, two of the people will be instantly connected, and her and this guy, when we met them, the connection was instantaneous, but, his wife, there was no connection. It was just, there was nothing at all. And ultimately, she threw the veto card down hard, and that's it.
Yeah. The veto card is something you should discuss with anybody you feel like you're getting a good connection with. I ask that now, or when I get into an open relationship and I like the guy and everything, after we've been together a couple of times, I ask, how do you guys your wife have veto power? I want to know that up front because I want to know that as soon as the day that she feels uncomfortable with me or uncomfortable with things he says, that she'll shut this down. And that's my heart that's involved. I can't separate that. That's why we're swally, because these people I see, I feel close to.
Yeah.
And having somebody, just veto me and making that shut down is a horrible feeling. I'm sorry. It's coming back to me.
I know, and we're making you talk about it a lot, so sorry about that. But
hey, I don't mind talking about it.
I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's kind of, we're one of the things you live, and I'm sure almost everybody feels this, is kind of the ebb and flow of the life, which is you've got your anchor in the couple that you are, but then everything else is much more transient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have super duper highs, amazing highs.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then you got, and then you got the lows or the slow times, or when things are kind of hard, and you got kind of weather that. And the hard thing is to figure out how to kind of even yourself out so you're not going crazy.
Right.
And it's hard not to go absolutely nuts for the highs.
Yeah.
Because the highs are so amazing.
Yeah.
They are. It's incredible.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I did the transition from when you guys were. It sounds like when you first got into it, it was we're going to be swingers, and then all of a sudden, you come back and you're like, hey, I'm in love with this guy. Was that a tough transition for you guys, or I guess maybe on Bill's behalf of you had gotten through a lot of the the trust issues, and then all of a sudden the game changed on you. And
well, there was a lot of intermediate stuff. I mean, we had, it felt like a really smooth transition. It was just sort of like an epiphany.
Okay.
To some guys, like, okay, he's in love with him. I don't feel threatened. I don't feel like she's going to leave me, or there's no threat at all, But I definitely know what this looks like, and so it was like, oh, okay, I'm okay with it.
And if I can interject, at the same time, Bill was building a relationship with our girlfriend. We had met her right before this happened, correct?
Before we met that couple.
Before we met this guy I met. And so Bill was building a really wonderful relationship with this woman that we continue to see. And so I think he was starting to feel the attraction of another person other than me. He was starting to feel, he was having feelers, whatever they call them, feels for her.
We had a couple months leading up to before then where I think a lot of our initial rules were getting kind of trampled on.
Oh yeah.
Pretty hard.
Yeah, I wanted to just back up for a second. We kind of jumped a little bit ahead. You had said a little while ago that you had come back from your vacation for your 30th anniversary, and you'd set up Craigslist profiles for MMF and MMF and MFF threesomes, and then on Craigslist. Can you briefly take us through, I guess, what happened after that, and like how it kind of led into you dating separately, and then get into where you're at now?
I won't.
Oh, you want to? Okay.
We'll let you comment. So, so it happened. So, and as we've come to see as the usual, the dicks flew into the mailbox.
So I had a long list of men.
We had a mailbox full of dicks, and and lots of sorting to do, and not many women. Long story short, we had I think 3 MMF threesomes, most of which weren't very good.
Let me interject, though.
One guy was a keeper. One guy was a keeper.
One guy, although we never met him and played with him, he was very smart, and he had a weird profile name, and that made him seem like he was well-read. And he said, "Have you tried these sites?" And he did. So we are on SL. That's popular here in our area of the country, where I know Cassidy is not very popular here, and other sites aren't. So that it's very regional, I know.
Yeah.
So that was the best information we got out of that whole Craigslist thing, is that this one guy told us about the sites and other places we can look for. I think he even said FetLife.
He said SLS and FetLife.
Yes.
And so we got on SLS, and we never, basically we shit canned Craigslist right away. We had 3 or 4 threesomes on Craigslist.
Mm-hmm.
She still sees one of the guys, so he kind of feeds one of her major kinks. So he's like a really good dom. And he and I get along well, but. Yeah. So we got an SLS, and then we started doing SLS.
We started seeing there was house parties. No. There was a club here in town, and so we went to that a couple of times. We never really met anybody there. Well, really nothing.
No one good.
We're not good at parties, so you got to feel that out for yourself.
Yeah.
Some people are good at parties. But we never felt that great. At least here we felt that it was cliquey.
Yeah.
But the site was nice, and we would often get couples because we were on a couple. We were as a couple on SLS, and so we started meeting new people on there.
Eventually, we met our Yoda couple.
Right.
I heard one of the podcasts. We had a couple that was
Yoda couple.
Like we had a meet that was. Where we knew as soon as the meeting started, we had really fucked up. We had totally fucked this up, and we were in a situation that we had to get out of. So we escaped, almost literally.
And by meaning you fucked it up, meaning that you met people and got yourselves in too deep and you needed to back out?
We met people and was at their house, and then and it was like, no, this is bad idea. And these people were basically giant drama. There was drama. These people were really, really messed up. There was no way in a million years that we were going to fuck these people.
Yeah, but it taught us a good thing. So our number one rule is we always meet in public first, and no playing. You just meet for a beer, or I went on one this weekend, and we just walked. And it was great. I'm like, why don't we do that more often?
I mean, just get beer, coffee, get something just to get
real catch.
Get to know them.
So by having those people, we learned a lesson to say, never agree to go to people's houses, have it in public, kind of get to know each other, see if you're really good that way too.
And then we reached out, we met a couple that was very experienced. They were very, very experienced, so we got together with them, and we clicked pretty well with them. I really clicked with her, and eventually that was one of the gateways. So the first gateway that we kind of stepped through was she and I played separately, and then she told me later that I was actually also the first time she had played separately, and they had been swinging for a long time. They had been swinging for years, and so we started playing separately. And then it ended up being really good, and I think that kind of steamrolled as we got through the year. And then eventually we were at a really small house party, and we ended up just by events playing in separate rooms for the first time. So
like the girl grabbed Bill and the guy grabbed me, and like immediately,
and boom,
and we were gone. They took us away, and it was kind of fun and energizing, and we were in our city.
For us, it was the fastest we'd ever gone from "Hi, how you doing?" to naked and fucking. It was boom.
And we survived it, and we're actually grateful for that, because we were like, "Oh, that was fun." We're okay with that.
And then a few weeks later, we met the woman who's our girlfriend, and we eventually had her over to our place, actually, to the room that we're sitting in. So that's one of our pro tips, at least for people, is that we have a guest room that we turned into a playroom. So we have this sexy play space that we created at our house, so we don't use our marital bed to play.
That was one of our first rules, is that we don't play in our bed.
And which we have broken, but
occasionally,
when circumstances call for it. And but anyway, so I started seeing her, and then she asked me to do something really totally boundary violating. This should be funny. So she asked me to be a date to a vanilla party.
Okay.
So it ended up being a date to a Christmas party. So so that was kind of a big deal.
That was a big deal for me. I was very much hesitant, but I thought every time Bill would ask that we crossed over a new boundary, and I was, he would do it, and I was sitting at home alone. I always remember, like, someday this might be me, and I would want the same from him. And I remember he went on the party.
Well, that's the compersion and the compassion that we have to operate with, which is, to think of the other person and kind of come out with compassion and love.
But he had to take his wedding ring off.
Yeah.
And
because you couldn't let her vanilla friends, oh, here's this married guy that I'm fucking. And, so the thing that happened, the other thing that happened at the same time was, so the night that I was going to this vanilla party, she was actually being the male member of the Yoda couple. She was being her date to a sex party, to a house party that was taking place here.
It was fun.
And so she was going to a house party as some other guys date. And she had a really good time. So,
yeah.
And you were going to a vanilla Christmas party.
I did get laid. I did get laid after the party. So, you know, it wasn't completely vanilla night, but it was still, you know, it was still good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that was sort of a major kind of step towards opening up the relationship in kind of a new fashion than we had before.
When you guys first started laying out the foundation and the framework for this, I imagine there wasn't rules on the list like no Christmas parties and that kind of thing, right? That's not something you can really plan for, but were there some rules a lot that you guys laid out at the beginning, and how did you go about letting those rules sort of dissolve over time? Because I think that's easy when people get into this. They overrule. They create more rules than they think are necessary because they're afraid of things, right? And then as they start experiencing it, sometimes those rules relax or new rules get created. I guess, what did the process look like for you?
Well, I think the rules we started with, well, because I was the one who had the infidelity, I let kind of Bill lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like he needed to set his boundaries and I needed to kind of say, okay. And so in the beginning, it was anytime we played, we had to be with each other, and it wasn't going to be in our bed. And there were, you know, they weren't really strict per se, but I know that they were more guidelines than I would say rules. And, you know, we were seeing kind of doing threesomes for a long time because Bill had to build up that trust for me. We were still in building trust mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so about a year afterwards that we started opening up our relationship, we were already seeing this one guy kind of doing threesomes with him, you know, often. And he told me one day that he would like to see me alone. And so I asked Bill, is it okay that this guy's going to be in town, and would it be okay if I just went to see him? And Bill struggled with it. He was not great, but he agreed to. But I had a finite time that I could be with him, and then I had to be home.
Right.
And so, go ahead.
I'm just curious, and I'm just wondering on Bill's behalf, if the guy had come to you, Bill, and said, hey, I'm going to be in town, it would be, I haven't asked Felice yet, but I think this would be really fun. Would you be okay with it? Would that have been easier?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I think it's better. I mean, now I think that would be kind of a cool step to do because we're kind of cool with it. It wouldn't be such a hard thing. It was a pretty hard emotional thing to navigate. Because I had, I mean, I remember I was at the gym working out, you know, while she was having her play date, you know, and I was trying not to think about it, but it was, you know, it was like on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I've watched them fuck before, and I kind of, you know, knew it was going on. So I ended up, you know, talking to this woman who I played with separately, and she kind of, you know, acted as my confidant and kind of talked me off the proverbial ledge, you know, while this was going on. I ended up actually paying that forward with another friend whose significant other was playing alone while she was losing her mind, thinking about it, you know, because it's almost like a scab you've, you know, torn off. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just hanging and twitching. It hurts. You just got to yank it off, and, you know, and get through that.
But I can relate to that analogy, though. It's maybe gross, but I can relate to it.
Well, with all the hiking you guys are doing right now, you probably have a few of those to deal with.
But after that, there was a lot of debriefing. I mean, when I got home, there was a discussion about how he felt, what was going on, how I really didn't stick to the timeline that was outlined for me. And so gentleman that I saw, he kind of pushed the boundaries against what Bill had wanted for. And there were opportunities where I had gone to see him out of town. And then I spent the night with him. That was a boundary thing. And I had to divulge to Bill one night that he did sleep with me. And so I kind of pushed Bill to break these guidelines, and Bill had to sit with it and see if he was okay with those. And so I knew in my heart he was going to be fine. But Bill had to get there on his own, and I couldn't force him.
Well, this guy, and this guy was, I think, some of these people exist with a lifestyle. So he, in the long run, you find he's a bit of a manipulator.
Mm-hmm.
He really gets off on that as much as the sex itself. And there's people like that who just kind of push. Mm-hmm. And I think, in a sense, a lot of it was just us getting over it. I mean, the thing with the sleepover was kind of another one of these sort of relationship, that's a marriage thing.
Yeah. Right.
And the hard thing for me was that, there were times that I could have, and actually the woman wanted me to sleep over, but I didn't, so I'll drag my ass home at 3 a.m., but I didn't sleep over. And we, so we eventually worked through that. And so eventually, sleepovers became one of the things that was, essentially on the menu.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think sex stuff really wasn't ever, sexual acts weren't really ever off limits. I think things are more geared toward transparency early on.
Condom use was always, for both him and the other gentleman. But then there were times that condoms weren't used, and we divulged that. And, we had to sit with that and see how we felt about it. And,
I mean, the thing that Felice did with that was early on, we divulged our primary care physician.
Oh,
that we're, that we're an open relationship, and our physician, we see the same doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And our doctor immediately said, okay, just whenever you need to get a panel done,
right.
Just basically call up and it'll be ordered. And so we've got now that we basically get tested. We kind of rotate in between, but we get tested every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got that set up with our doctor. So
yeah.
I know you guys, one of your sponsors is STD testing. So.
Yes, and that's awesome that your doctor was so supportive and was just like, okay, here, yes, anytime you need it, and provided that guidance to you.
So the suggestion actually came from our Yoda couple. So that Yoda couple, ultimately, our friend, she said, that she just told her doctor, hey, we're an open relationship. You don't have to say you're swingers because there's a stigma with that. But,
right.
An open relationship, and, just you get tested.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm what I've heard, or as I understand it, a lot of the times that you guys have pushed a rule or a boundary, they were almost these little gambles that either one or the other of you took, which was, I'm going to break this rule, but I think it'll be okay. And then you sleep over, and then you don't use condoms, and then you don't do this. And I guess that seems risky, especially coming from a starting point of infidelity. I mean, and I'm not trying to challenge it. It's just, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that.
Yeah.
When you spent so much time rebuilding the trust, and then to say, I'm gonna break it again, but I think it's gonna be okay. I guess, can you talk about that mindset? And maybe that's something that's innate in your relationship that we can't understand, but I'd love to try.
Right. So since I'll start talking because I'm the rule breaker. Bill is very much by the book. I mean, I kind of live like what would you say? I kind of live passionately, or in a lot that I do, I kind of ask for permission after I fuck up. And I kind of that way throughout my life. I wasn't raised with really good boundaries. My mother had mental illness. And so I try really hard to have good boundaries, but it's not innate in me. I wasn't raised with good boundaries. And I guess after having a marriage for 30 years to somebody, you really know them. And like, I think that I knew Bill better than he knew himself. And I think that I knew his tolerance level was higher than he was leading on to. And I don't feel like I was manipulating Bill, but I do feel like I think he knew that we both knew that we would stick this out. And I just knew that he could tolerate a lot more than he was leading on to. True. But I think in the beginning, what I kept hearing from Bill through therapy is the not knowing, the lack of trust that happened was more of him not knowing than he wanted to know. And I felt that whatever I did, that he knew completely and honest, that I was completely honest with him, whatever I did, that was more important than the actual action. So I think every time we were at therapy, I kept hearing, but she could have told me if I just didn't know, if I had, if there was just honesty. And so through the therapy and all that, I knew that transgressions were going to be allowed, but as long as I had full disclosure immediately following them, that was sufficient for Bill. And so I guess that's what I can tell you, is that I knew that Bill, his angst wasn't that I fucked somebody, but if I had come home, fucked somebody, and then told him immediately, all that would have been okay. It was the lack of honesty. So go ahead.
Well, sort of half. I mean, I think we have this yin and yang relationship. I kind of provide a certain degree of, I'm kind of the stabilizer, and then she's always, bringing exciting things home, pets and animals, and,
and men.
And so there's a yin and yang to it. So she kind of pushes me out of my shell, kind of that, and so we big thing is we communicate, and I think every marriage has its little issues and problems, and I think ours is no different. But the big thing is that we work through things, and not every transgression means that all of a sudden that rule's out the door.
We wear condoms.
Condoms are still basically the rule of the day, and the rule of the day for almost all of the partners. So the people where that hasn't happened, it's someone who we've seen for a very long time.
Yeah,
it's not like if somebody pulls some of that stealth shit, and it's early on, that's basically kind of a see you later kind of moment. Mm-hmm. It becomes, it's disclosed and it's happened, but it means that, there's testing that needs to happen.
Right.
And that person isn't trusted,
right.
So it's usually somebody, and we see people for, long periods of time now, so it's not like, the rules are always in flux. It's more of they're gradual things that I think we both want to do, like the sleepovers and the more relationship-y sort of things, and like dates.
Okay.
Because one of the things we've had is I was seeing one woman, and I ended up only having sex with her once, but we went on all these dates, and it was my girlfriend was the one who said, she told me, "You're dating her. That's not a swinger relationship. You're just dating," and then her, and her response was, "And that's kind of weird."
Yeah. Well,
And and so there's some things like that I think we have always had a real dynamic relationship. I would say that in a sense we fight most days. Sometimes they're a little.
That's just because I'm a fiery Irish girl.
That's a little. There's little fights. Sometimes I think she's trying to give me a little fight just to turn me on before I talk to her in the morning.
And that's another thing.
Just to turn up the temperature.
And that's what I want to say to people maybe listening that are new, is that Bill and I's sex life has gone out even better than I can even imagine. I mean, because we bring all these new ideas that we are learning from other partners to our own sex life, and it's really steamy and nice and fun, and all that extra energy comes to our bedroom, and I think that's been the most positive thing with our relationship.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, learn new techniques and. Get to practice with different equipment, and then you come home and practice with the old equipment. And, but it's a new technique, and it's it's been great. And so that part's been, been exciting. The fantasy movie reel in my head's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, I bet the porn you used to watch is like nothing now.
Actually, the honest truth is we very rarely actually turn the porno on.
Right.
We used to watch the porno, let's get warmed up. We'll turn and get a porno on and watch it. And, we almost never do that now. Usually it's right to it.
Yeah. We've rekindled a lot of sexual energy in the last couple of years. And that's been fun.
I think that's amazing. Sorry.
We talk more.
Yeah.
We even talk more than we used to.
I mean, and sex. I mean, our discussions about sex are very frank and very open. Mm-hmm. And there's, one of the things I think that also, this goes kind of the Dan Savage advice, is, we have people who want to do things with us that our normal partner isn't interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you can explore kind of, styles and kinks that the other person has no interest in, but you've got someone else who really is. And so you can, you sort of scratch that itch without, it's kind of a different way of not asking your partner to take one for the team.
Right.
Instead, you're doing it with someone who really likes doing that exact same thing that you do. And so then it's, that's sort of an awesome way to fulfill, your sexual wish list.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have more questions on that line? Or I have something different?
No, I wanted to say that so far, and we've got more to talk about, but I've really enjoyed the conversation, and especially from a standpoint of if I were to be the type of person to write a manual on how to do this, you guys are the sort of the quintessential antithesis to that manual. And every time you tell us something, I'm like, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. And then, and then it works, right? And here you guys are, you're laughing, you're telling us that your sex life is better than it's ever been.
And you talk a lot more than you used to.
Yeah. And your relationship is at its pinnacle. And I think that is one of the reasons that we love the format that we've created. And I'm not
patting yourself on the back there.
I'm tooting our own horn, but I think it's perfect, because if we were to tell people how to do this is not how we would tell them how to do it. But you guys are an example that shows that you don't have to follow a guideline. You can write your own strategy.
And
it's awesome.
And life happens, and you can figure it out in the way that it works for you.
So I listen to some of the podcasts about folks who start off soft swap, and then kind of they kind of inch their way in, and we basically jumped in with both feet, and so I guess in my head, she wasn't going to get unfucked by this other guy, and so
I think that's maybe that's the issue,
and that might have been the instigator was that she had already kind of jumped off the ledge.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was my job to jump off the ledge after her, into the water. And that was the thing that took a long time, was getting the energy to jump off and do it myself.
You got to save her from the mailbox full of dicks, right?
Yeah.
Had to help her sort through the dicks.
And I think the other thing about our marriage is that, we were married at 21. We met at 19. So if you look at the marriage statistics, we shouldn't even be married still.
Yeah.
We are one of those outliers. So I'm not, I think there's some things you can take from us that would be successful in other relationships, or other people starting off in non-monogamy. But I hear, what is very fascinating to me when I listen to all the stories out there on the podcast about different relationships, when people say, oh, we've been together 5 years or 10 years. I'm shocked that you would even consider opening up your marriage for such a short period. You've only known each other for 10 years? Oh my God, Maine. That seems like so new.
or even the couples who met, where basically they were open from the go.
Yes.
And yeah,
yes.
I know.
Yeah,
She was saying that, and I know I've listened to all the podcasts, so I knew what she was saying to you when she said that. And a lot of us.
But it was a different time, 1980s. That was a different.
Oh yeah,
a different
world.
With no internet.
Yeah, that does make things easier.
That's another thing I wanted to, with the age thing, that I do think is kind of consequential. And one of the reasons I wrote to you was, when you're older, there still is the sensation that the clock is ticking really loud when you're a little bit older, because you feel that sense of time much more acutely when you're a bit older, and you sort of feel like you need to get your shit together.
Yeah.
If you're going to do something like this, it's something you need to experience kind of in the now.
Right.
And so I think that was a big element of kind of pushing us the way we did.
Right. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Initially with her infidelity, but the reaction to it was, oh shit, this is a possibility. How do we basically engineer this to happen? And then go.
And I on that, I think if you're young, let's just say you're 30-ish when whatever. I mean, you've got a long time to develop this relationship and be open, and we didn't have that luxury. So maybe that's why we were a little quicker or doing stupid things. Is that I think we both felt this sense of time weighing on us. With the death of my father, I truly felt that. I really felt like I still feel a little bit of that, in that, I don't know, retirement's right around the corner for us.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, has that feeling changed over the last 3 years?
I think it's lessened a bit as you kind of get your bucket list kind of starts to get marked off, but that feeling's still kind of there. I mean, the feeling of aging is very strong. That's that dichotomy between, oh shit, I'm 50 and, there's all these things I haven't done and I'd like to do, versus, oh God, I'm 50 and I'm having the best sex of my life. I'm with someone who's, also at the same age, and it's like mind blowing, the kind of things you never would have imagined yourself, even when you're in your 20s, certainly your 20s, your 30s, or even 40s, that you would be doing these amazing, amazing things and feeling these amazing things when you're in your 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the really big things.
Yeah. And even more so that you're doing those things because when something huge happened, you didn't throw in the towel and say, well, the last 30 years are out the window because of this one thing, but rather you took it and you flipped it on its head, and now you've turned it into something that has changed your lives for the better. So I think that's an awesome lesson. And I'm also curious. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Felice had, this massive faith in me that, that basically pulling the pin on that grenade, wasn't going to blow up the marriage. I mean, that I would be forgiving. It was painful, but ultimately she was right.
I knew him because I know him, because when you don't live with somebody for 30 years and not know them.
So maybe we don't recommend this as a strategy for everybody.
No, I would not do that.
But maybe we think about it as if this happened, you have options other than fold up and
part ways.
Yeah, take your game home, right? So.
Well, Esther Perel, those are her books. It's the infidelity should not be the end of the marriage,
right,
unless there's something deeper going on. But that it shouldn't be game over kind of event. And we're here to tell you it isn't.
For so many people, it's basically, you fuck someone else. Well, that's it. Get out, leave. We're done. And so I think that I knew there was more to it, and it also tapped. And it was important that it tapped into something that I also very much wanted, something I very much was unfulfilled by. Probably the bad thing on me is I was too afraid to ask for it.
Right.
Yeah.
I was too scared to open that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you weren't sure what was going to happen, right?
Well, yeah, and so maybe that was, I mean, I know there's couples where they actually go through that door. It's like, they walk through the door of, hey, it'd be fun to, go fuck other people. And, maybe you're not that blunt about it, but, they kind of go at it through that kind of way. We kind of went, we were kind of blown through that door, and so I think if you do it kind of in that careful way where you open, I think you can kind of inch your way and kind of tiptoe through. It says, go to a sex party and watch and get turned on, and then graduate to maybe, having sex at the party with your partner,
right,
and slowly move your way towards getting, intimate with somebody else. We kind of just jumped both feet into the deep end.
And although I don't really have regrets, maybe in the beginning I do. I wish I had done it differently. Mm-hmm. And we had done it like your textbook kind of way. But it happened the way it happened.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, and who says the textbook is always right? So.
Right.
Yeah, it's not always right for everybody. You mentioned, I'm going to change topics completely here, but you mentioned you have 2 kids, and I was curious, do they know what's happened at all in your relationship? I'm sure that you're a little bit different people now than you were 3 years ago.
So they're both mid-20s.
Okay.
One of them was at college at the time, and it wasn't really necessary to tell him. But the oldest was with us, and he knew pretty much right away. I mean, he suspected, and we confirmed. And then there was since he was living in the house and we wanted to have people over here, we had a very adult conversation with him. And the other one, now the youngest, has moved back home from college, and he's very aware of the situation. And he doesn't want to discuss it.
Because his room is the sex room? Or...
No, we have 4 bedrooms, so they have their own bedrooms still.
We have had sex in his room.
Yeah.
But not when he was home.
So, yeah, it was, they both know about it. We often tell them, hey, listen to this, what this is about. Both of them seem kind of okay with it now. At the beginning, there was some very immature ickiness. The oldest thought, hey, people who have open relationships get divorced more often. I don't want you and Dad to divorce. I don't see why you have to do this. But now I think he's a little more, and he is transgender. Mm-hmm. So when we were discussing it and he would give us a lot of flack about it, I said, your father and I, first you came out gay and we had no problem with that. we were like, okay, just another day. Then now you're transgender. And did we give you any heartache about that? No, we were all very accepting of that. So we asked you to be the same. And he understood that. And then our youngest is, he doesn't want to talk about it, and he knows it's there. And sometimes he'll drop little jokes about it. But yeah, we felt like it was really important for them to know, especially at their age. They could totally handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I also think like the fact that one of your children is transgender and that you've shown that compassion and acceptance for him the whole time as he grew up, that is helpful, I'd imagine, to have in your family, because you've shown that, and then hopefully they can show it back to you.
Right. And I think that's, we don't really talk about it much anymore, and it's just part of who we are now. So.
Right. Yeah, it's not like you have to remind them every day at dinner.
No.
Oh, no. And we don't really hide that we have an open relationship. Like if you checked our Facebook, it says in an open relationship, both of us.
But we don't advertise.
We try to normalize it. So that's probably why Bill liked your podcast, because I think as more people just see normal human beings, run-of-the-mill people who are in a non-monogamous relationship, it normalizes it. And so by hiding, we're not really practicing what we're preaching.
Yeah.
And so I have no more family left. Oh, I have a brother, but he doesn't know, and he doesn't need to know, because he's had some health issues, and I didn't want, that's not something he needs to know. But Bill's brother and his family, his wife,
my brother and his wife, no. Well, they don't necessarily know the swinging part. Yeah. They know open relationship. I've actually probably shared more with his wife than him, just about kind of advice on ways to go, to sort of, if they need to spice up their own sex life, which they might want to do, what the options were.
But I think your aunt knows and your cousin knows. My aunt and cousin
know. My parents don't know.
Well, they may know, but they don't lead on to that. And
it's in the realm of things that will not be spoken of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was also wanted to ask, and you've talked a little bit about hearing the clock ticking, I guess. Do you hear the clock ticking on your time in the world of non-monogamy? Like when you turn 60, do you hang up your pack of condoms and you're done, or do you feel you're just gonna keep on keeping on?
But
I think it tails off. I mean, if you look at it, it changes. I mean, we meet people when we have sex with people who are in a range of ages. That probably skews a little bit younger than us as opposed to older than us. But, then again, you go on, at least we go on SLS, and there's people, 65, 70 who are still have profiles up there.
But I think, as your health wanes and you have issues, I think that does get a little, I do, I know gentlemen that, the ED is plaguing them, and they're pushing 60.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an issue. I mean, even though I tell them, PIV is always important to being together. We can do other things.
Yeah, I was going to say you got hands and a mouth and toys and.
Well, you my Yoda friend, because that was her big advice, which was basically, for me it was, never really used condoms my whole life, and all of a sudden, it's condom sex. And that was a big change for me. And what she said was, we were together, said, look, you can't get it up. You've got hands, you've got mouth, there's toys, get to work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important lesson, no matter how old you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the male side of things. The clock's ticking a little bit on your cock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have some friends who are a bit older than us that we play with in another city, and they're older, and so the biggest thing is the broader health issues, not just sexual health, but overall health also gets in the way. You know, and then it goes to remind you, you know, about, you know, the shortness of life, which is kind of this, you know, life is short, so enjoy it. And this is part of enjoying it.
Yeah.
And sex is part of enjoying it. You know, it's also one of the great things in life. And, so the, you know, the clock is still there looming.
And so with that in mind, are there things that are coming onto your bucket list as the time ticks that you're like, man, I still haven't done this, or you learn about something new and there's something you want to try, and or have you pretty much polished off the list in your?
No, I think there's still, you know, well, for me at least, you know, to like to get, you know, have 3 women at once. That would be really awesome. And I don't know if Felice is thinking about how to integrate a 4th guy into the.
Absolutely. Lifesome is next on my list.
And so
I don't know. You know.
I mean, I think we're, you know, there's some exploration of kinks and some different types of play that I think each of us has some interest in. I mean, you do stuff, and you've got your list of sort of standbys and favorites, but you're interested in exploring different things.
Have you?
And the cool thing.
Go ahead.
When you meet lots of people, you get exposed. Someone will whip up something that's like, hey, you know, I want to do this, and boom, you got someone who likes and is experienced doing something, and you get a demo right there.
Yeah, no kidding. Have either of you experimented with bisexual play or playing with partners of the same sex?
Yes. So we have a girlfriend, and because of her health, her and I don't play as much. But in the beginning, we were quite the threesome.
Yeah. So I'd say we're both kind of.
I'm more of I'm not truly bi, I would say, but I find particular women attractive, especially intelligent women.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing.
So she's sort of a hetero, flexible, pansexual.
Yeah. And I've been with a couple of women, and because I thoroughly enjoy watching 2 men kind of suck each other's cocks. Bill has done that on my behalf. I do have. I did
it because it was polite.
You don't have to make excuses.
He sucked my cock first, so I thought, well, I better
reciprocate.
I better return the favor.
But I do have a friend I see. I think that really he's truly bi, and I would say that's a bucket list thing, is that I do want to get with him and another truly bi guy and, you know, do a threesome that way. Mm-hmm. But we just haven't found the right time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because I really think that's hot. That's kind of something I never thought that I would think is hot. But when I saw it happen, I was like, oh my God, that's such a turn on.
So she would like it if I was more bi.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to change him. I don't want to.
So I would say I'm very situational. In terms of,
that's fair.
Yeah, but I don't want to force him to do that. I mean, by no means I don't want to do that.
I don't sit there and jerk off thinking about it, but
hey, as long as you're polite, that's all we ask. But so I guess
defines who I am in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you guys were hoping to get out there to the podcast world, the podcast sphere?
I mean, you often ask about resources and things that people look to. And one of the things I think we'd like to support, you know, I'm a scientist, and I think science on open relationships and sex is really important. So we've tried to contribute to that whenever possible.
And what resources specifically?
So a couple of the really good resources. One resource is there's a guy at the Kinsey Institute, Justin Laymiller, and he has like a website where you can actually go look at active, ongoing sex studies that are going on, and you can actually see if you want to participate, because they're looking for people to do surveys. So I'm in the middle of filling out a 12-month survey on being poly, being part of a triad, and filling out a monthly questionnaire on that. We got interviewed about conversion for another research study. So that's one thing. The other thing, there's a really great podcast out there called The Science of Sex. So it's Zhana Zardalova. I think I mispronounced her name, but she's got this podcast that at least Felice and I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Zhana, right? Zhana, and then it's yeah.
And a name that's hard to pronounce, Eastern Europe, and then she's also got a great website called the Casual Sex Project. And so if you got like a great hookup or swinger story that you want to write about, or just want to go read about other people fucking, you can go on and they're publishing, I don't know, 7 or 8 stories a day.
Wow.
And we've contributed to that, right?
Yeah, and we've contributed a few ourselves to that story, to that archive. But there's, if you just want to read, they're not quite penthouse letters kind of quality, but they're, you could read about other people's experiences.
Yeah.
And and they're from around the world, so there's hookup stories from Africa, Europe, Russia.
This is why I knew he'd be okay with it. He's such a good scientist.
Yeah.
A good thinker.
So, those are a couple things. I guess, and one of the things that I found, for at least me, that was a really good resource is, in the USA, most, condoms come in 2 sizes, either regular or Magnum. So I found there's a company that actually sells, I think it's 1. So it's My One. So you can actually go in and measure your cock and have a condom that actually is suited for you, suited exactly to fit your anatomy. If you happen to be one of the probably 80% of guys whose cock doesn't exactly fit into one of the 2 sizes really, really well. And so that's an option if you really want to. And that's been much better for me, having a condom that really fits, fits comfortably and fits well. It really helps a lot.
And what was that? What was that called again?
So it's the brand is One, so ONE. Okay. But it's My. So they have regular condoms, but then they have ones that are essentially custom fit, and so awesome. you can either print out something where it's like a 8.5 by 11 page that you can use to measure your cock, or you can just
that should be big enough. I need the 11 by 17.
Right.
11 legal size.
Yeah.
They have a legal guide, but anyway, but that's a good option, and I think that's can be an issue, particularly for the older guys. Condom use becomes increasingly problematic.
Yeah.
Because you generally got to have a hard cock to put that on.
Those are fantastic resources, and some that we have not had other people mention. So we're also huge science supporters of scientific data. So I think that I'm going to go check out some of those studies, because I think that would be, and it's very important too. So thank you for sharing.
And all the links will be in the show notes. So we appreciate that. And
believe it or not, we have read all the textbooks. So even though my following, we've
listened to
we've read the Ethical Slut.
And the Ethical Slut was really good.
And Opening Up, and Dan Savage. But there's and there's a ton of other podcasts, including yours. So I really appreciate your podcast. It's great to hear this variety of stories.
That's really great. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, and I will say the variety can't happen without people like you two willing to share a totally different spin than we've heard. So we do really appreciate it.
Yes. Before we end, I want to ask one question. I want to ask, to end on a funny note, do you have like a funny blooper or just funny story from non-monogamy that you'd be willing to share?
We talked about this last night.
Yeah, we did. And we couldn't find anything, and then it hit us.
So early on, when we were, first starting, we were just figuring out what to do we had a threesome with a guy, and his suggestion was to go to an adult theater. And so we went to an adult theater in town, and we, and go in, and they're basically playing the endless porno loop up on the screen. And the problem with the adult theater is it's full of a bunch of, we'll say, just low-life guys. And so a woman walks into the theater with two guys, and all the guys it's like the moth that you just had. The moth is the flame, and the moths are.
I was cracking up the whole time. I couldn't even, because these guys were all turned, and they looked at me, and they were all jerking off, or
they were
just staring at me, and it was just, I was laughing so hard.
I was sort of borderline appalled because, there was a guy sitting in the seat next to me with his pants around his ankles, and it was like there was no sense of personal space, and it was a combination of horror and so that ended, and we said, we're going to spring for a hotel room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like a bucket list item.
Well, if you want to see that happen,
you can tell us.
I was like, where to find it. You can just find it in an adult theater.
A theater.
So we drive past the theater pretty frequently because it's on a main drag here in town between the two places we work. And I would just we'd drive by in the car, and I would turn to her and start singing the song Memories.
You go, Memories.
She said she still drives by there and laughs every time.
I just laugh. I thought it was just hilarious. Like human nature at its finest.
Yeah. That's awesome.
There were other funny stories, but that one kind of stood out as a...
That one takes the cake. Yeah. I feel like if I was a woman, I would almost be tempted to go there on my own with like a big thing of popcorn and just like try to watch the movie while like everybody like closed in around me. And I don't know. It would just
that would be way too much.
It would be funny. I'm going to start taking you to theaters just for fun.
Be prepared. I'm sure Emma would be a really great flame for all those moms.
That would be a little bit uncomfortable.
Your birthday's coming up.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to find one in this country.
Well, yeah.
Which would then not be in English, and that would be even...
I don't think the plot and the dialogue really matters.
No, not the movie. Just like people talking to me in other languages would be another issue.
You can't talk during a movie.
The conversation I had with the gentleman in the theater didn't register either. Yeah. When I asked the guy to move, it didn't change his behavior one bit.
Okay, maybe it doesn't matter then.
All right, we won't go to the theater. Fine.
Yeah.
But.
Well, we just really wanted to thank you both. I think you shared a story that, you shared a vulnerable part of yourself and opened up, and we really appreciate that. And I hope our listeners, I know our listeners do too. So thank you so much for being willing to email us and share your story.
Yeah, and I hope we get to talk to you guys when you are 65. And we're still doing this, and you're still doing that, and you can come on and tell us why the 54-year-old version of you was wrong.
Okay, that's a deal.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. That sounds like a plan.
Well, it's been great. We really like doing this, and if it helps others, we're really happy to do it.
Yeah, you're doing a real service for the community.
Hey, you guys are the meat and potatoes.
Yes,
we're just the megaphone. So thank you for your stories and sharing.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Good night.
Have a good evening. We back.
Yeah, we're back.
Thank you to Bill and Felice for their honesty and sharing a pretty amazing story. Actually, a very amazing story.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said pretty there. We, again, wanted to remind everybody that it is now 2019. So that's cool.
Happy New Year again at the end of the show.
We hope you all have an amazing 2019. We hope you go kick some ass.
Yeah. Next week, we have an interview with a woman named Aaliyah.
Yeah, she is the partner, or one of the partners, of one of our previous guests, Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't already done so, it's a good idea to maybe do a little homework and go listen to Vaughn's episode before you listen to Aaliyah's episode. However, if you don't, you won't be lost, but that's who the Vaughn is we're talking about.
Yes. Good clarification.
Yep. So now that 2019 is almost over, we'll let you get into the rest of your day.
Sounds good. You can find us at our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, or on Twitter or Cassidy under the screen name NNM Podcast.
And come say hi to us. We miss you.
Yeah, reach out to us. We love hearing from everyone. Please.
Bye now.